Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dark Archive. We appreciate you choosing to spend this night with us, here in the shadows. Tonight, we have compiled two terrifying stories that prove the real nightmares aren't hidden in fiction, but in the most remote and forgotten corners of our world. Get comfortable, but don't you dare relax. If you enjoy this journey into the abyss, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let's begin. Born in an ordinary settlement far in the north, and I remember vividly how I dreamed of escaping this place for the big city. I was filled with such fierce passion and drive. It seemed to me that true life, authentic existence, was happening somewhere else, somewhere out there. Perhaps that is genuinely how it feels when you are 20, but with the slow, steady march of time. The stark realization arrives that what you ran to isn't life at all. I was 38 years old when I suddenly gained the ability to see myself from the outside, no family, no home of my own, and zero prospects. All I had was the city, a colossal, brutal landscape of concrete, cold, and spiritual lifelessness. I made the decision to drive back to my native lands, desperate to rediscover that long-forgotten feeling of deep calm and simple harmony. To my genuine surprise, almost nothing had changed over all those years. The immense boreal forest still stood, rising up like a dark green wall around the settlement. The piercing scent of pine needles and damp earth was as fresh as it had been in my childhood. The river, true, had become shallower, showing only the rotting wooden pilings of an old dock. But everything felt incredibly cozy, incredibly familiar, and so close to my soul. That was the moment I knew I wouldn't return to the city. I moved into my parents' abandoned house and immediately started the long, arduous process of building a new life for myself on this old, familiar ground. Much of the house required serious repairs. I needed to update the plumbing, fix the roof, and fully restore the electricity. But none of this daunting work scared me. I finally felt that I was where I belonged. I finally felt home. The next day, on my way to the small local shop, an old school acquaintance, George, approached me. "Wow, look who decided to grace us with his presence. Ivan. Where have you been hiding?" he exclaimed. He gripped my hand with startling warmth, and his eyes held a sincere, uncomplicated joy that I hadn't seen in years. "Oh, here and there," I replied, feeling stiff and awkward, still adjusting to genuine human connection. "I haven't seen you since your mother's funeral." "When was that?" "5 years ago, maybe?" George asked. "Something like that," I said, trying to sound indifferent. "Mom was old. I was prepared for her loss, so I came to terms with her death pretty quickly. After all, none of us can live forever. But my mother's old house was now mine, and it brought immediate, practical problems. Remembering the sparking wires in the kitchen, I leaned in and asked my friend, George, "Listen. There was an electrician who lived here, old Mr. Miller. Do you have his number?" George gave me a look of genuine surprise, tilting his head. "Ivan, that number won't reach the living. Michalik died. A cow trampled him," he said with an inexplicable hint of dark irony. "A cow? You're joking," I whistled, unable to process the bizarre detail. "Nope. He was drunk, and he and the cow apparently had some kind of dispute. She stepped right on his ribs. That was the end of him," George explained. "Unbelievable," I muttered. "I need an electrician. Can you help me find one?" Do you remember his son, Lyoka Zilov? Well, he's the one who does all the electrical work in the village now. He followed in his father's footsteps, George said. Let's hope he didn't follow all of them, George laughed, a genuine, deep sound. You haven't changed a bit, George. My friend handed me the electrician's number, and we said our goodbyes. That very afternoon, I called Lyoka, Alex. He repaired the wiring in minutes, efficiently bypassing the ancient meter in 2 places, winding thick electrical tape around the connections, and suddenly, the lights flickered on, filling the rooms with a warm, yellow glow. I reached for my wallet to pay him in cash, but he waved it away, saying he only accepted liquid currency, meaning a bottle of local vodka. Just like that, Alex and I became fast friends. Alex, like the other villagers, lived a simple, customary life. He kept chickens, geese, and 4 pigs, while his wife, Sonia, looked after the children and tended the large vegetable plot. I loved the local routine, uncomplicated and deeply rhythmic. But for a long time, I couldn't find my own niche, my own sense of purpose here. I even considered applying for a job at the dusty sawmill down the road. Then, one day, while clearing the junk out of the shed, I stumbled upon my father's old double-barreled shotgun. It was undoubtedly old, worn smooth by years of use, but it was sturdy, reliable, and clearly still functional. As I slowly unrolled it from the oil-soaked canvas rag, I felt a sudden, frantic pounding in my chest. When I was a very young boy, my father often took me hunting. Back then, I understood little and was secretly terrified of the wild animals we sought. Much had changed since then, including the man I had become. In the bottom of the old wooden chest, I found a box of shells. I loaded the rifle and headed straight for the forest. I wandered aimlessly among the towering pines, hoping for some chance encounter with prey. After 3 hours of intense, silent stalking, the only thing I saw was a solitary hare, and that cocky creature simply seemed to sneer at my clumsy attempts to hit it. I returned home empty-handed, my ears ringing faintly from the 2 shots I had taken. But deep down, I felt a new sense of quiet certainty. People aren't born with inherent skills, they are acquired through agonizing effort and countless attempts. If I failed this first time, I would succeed the second, or the 10th, or the 100th. It was only a matter of time. I was proven right, because when hunger is your cruelest instructor, you learn fast. Over the next 4 months, I mapped out the forest, discovering the best game trails and the densest feeding grounds. I replaced the antique shotgun with a modern rifle and could now hit targets with remarkable accuracy from a great distance. I learned all the hunter's subtle tricks. I even secured a proper hunting license. I had become the local source of fresh meat, earning a steady income, and I was immensely proud of my transformation. My life in the settlement was stabilizing, growing quiet and purposeful, though I couldn't say the same for the others. The quiet dread started when old Granny Masha approached me. She was the kindest soul, having looked after me in my earliest years, and she still brought me her delicious, delicate pancakes on holidays. "Ivan, wait up, dear," the elderly neighbor called, hurrying toward me with her rolling, labored gait. "What is it, Granny Masha?" I paused. "Have you seen Marta?" "My Marta? Who?" I asked, confused. "My goat. My white one, the one with the intelligent eyes. Have you seen her?" "No, Granny Masha, I haven't seen her." "Did she run away?" Oh, I don't know, Vanya. Maybe someone stole her. Marta was so smart. Sometimes, in my old age, I forget to put her up for the night. My memory is going, you know, but she always walked herself into the shed. I distinctly remember locking the door last night. But this morning, I went out. The shed was open, Marta was gone, and even poor Kubik is missing. Well, Kubik the dog runs off every spring, but Marta, she was locked up tight. Granny Masha, I understand, I said, pitying her genuine distress. I'm heading into the woods soon. I'll look for your goat. Maybe she wandered off. Oh, Vanya. Thank you, dear boy. Thank you, she cried, pressing her wrinkled hands together. At the time, I didn't attach much weight to her worries. But soon, identical stories began to pop up every single day. One neighbor lost an entire flock of turkeys, only scattered feathers remained. Another's hen house was savaged, half the birds were dragged off, the rest violently torn to pieces. In the house across the street, 2 cats vanished simultaneously, they simply walked out the door and disappeared. Initially, everyone set traps, convinced it was a clever fox or a territorial wolf pack. But do foxes or wolves drag off full-grown German Shepherd dogs? The last straw came when the Peterson family reported the theft of an entire yearling calf. The residents fell into a profound, chilling state of confusion. What, or who, had the monstrous strength and cunning to do this? The sun had sunk completely below the rim of the tall trees, and the air was turning cold and damp. A solitary, dark cloud hung over the clearing. I was walking quickly across the field after my hunt, my thoughts focused on my warm house and a filling dinner. I had managed to shoot 3 hares all day. Ordinarily, I would have considered that a good haul, but now that so many villagers were without livestock and meat, the demand for game was far greater than my supply. The atmosphere in the settlement was grim, tragedy had struck nearly every second household. As I hurried along the path, I cast a quick glance to the left and looked away, dismissing the vague shape I had seen. But something forced me to look again. I stopped. Something was there. Not an animal I recognized. Not a human. Imagine something impossibly thin and terribly tall, standing awkwardly, hunched over the field like a grotesque animal. Birds flew overhead, rushing toward the deep woods for shelter. The wind whistled through the dead grass. And this silent, elongated thing stood completely motionless in the center of the field. I desperately tried to figure out what it was, but in the rapid descent of the twilight, I couldn't make out any features. And getting closer was unthinkable, even with my rifle in hand. Such beasts do not exist. And people certainly don't look like that. This creature looked like a walking calamity, a living embodiment of bad fortune. If I had been even slightly braver then, I might have just taken the shot and ended the monstrosity. But I hesitated. I was paralyzed by its sheer unreality. I returned to the village, deeply disturbed by the sighting. A few days later, Alex called and offered to have me over for a visit. When I knocked on his door, he opened it, and a powerful wave of warmth and cooking smells washed over me. I quickly shed my jacket and dropped my backpack by the front door. "Ivan, get in here, everything will be ready soon," Alex said, pointing toward the kitchen. The oven was roaring, roasting meat, and his wife, Sonia, was moving sadly near the refrigerator. She greeted me with a quiet, sorrowful nod. I sat down against the wall while Alex retrieved a bottle of his homemade berry liqueur from the cupboard. "So, how are things with you? What's the mood?" I asked, desperate to break the heavy silence that hung in the small house. "Things are shit," my friend replied flatly, pouring 2 glasses. "Did something happen to you?" My muscles involuntarily tensed up, bracing for bad news. "Did something happen?" 30 geese, 10 chickens, and my biggest boar," Alex said, tossing back the drink and slamming the glass down hard on the counter. "They took all of it?" I exclaimed, horrified. "Every last one. All my labor. All my cash. I spent a whole damn year raising them, feeding them, cleaning up their filth, walking around looking like a pauper, and for what?" Alex was dangerously close to tears. I clapped him on the shoulder and hugged him awkwardly. "We'll sort it out. It'll be okay," I promised, trying to sound supportive. Sonia silently pulled the roasted goose from the oven and placed it on the table. "Eat while there's anything left," she said, and withdrew quickly into the children's room. "Alex, we won't starve, I promise," I said, trying to reassure him. "The game in the forest is getting sparse, but I still have my rifle. We'll be fine." "The rifle," Alex interrupted, his eyes blazing with sudden, cold fury. "I need your rifle. I will shoot that filth myself, whatever it is." "Are you out of your mind? I can't just give you my rifle. What if you shoot a person? I'd be charged with murder." I protested, taking a drink of the strong liqueur. "It's not a person, Ivan." "It's not a person at all," Alex insisted. He grabbed a goose leg and ripped a chunk of meat off the bone. "That thing slaughtered half my livestock last night. I saw it myself. I heard the commotion in the coop, the birds were screaming. I ran out, and I saw it. A 3-legged, ugly monstrosity. I don't even know what to call it. Its eyes looked almost human. But it was absolutely not human. It saw me and darted off. I started picking through the bloody mess in the barns, and then I heard the kids screaming inside the house. I threw down the pitchfork and ran inside." "What happened?" A terrible chill shot up my spine, from my feet to the back of my neck. Alex waved his hand dismissively. "It was nothing, thank God. That demon came right up to the window with its mouth bloody and covered in feathers. Our oldest daughter saw it staring in and just screamed. Sonia and I ran to her, and the thing vanished." "Vanished? Where did it go?" I asked, leaning forward, impatient and terrified. "The pig pen. It used the kids as a distraction to get me to run inside, and then it attacked the boar. All that was left were the hooves. I heard the pigs screaming, but I couldn't abandon the children." Alex stared blankly at the wall. "And after that nightmare, you expect me to just go into the woods and hunt for hares?" "No. There is only one thing I want to put a bullet in, and I will lie down on a bed of bones if I have to, but I will free this village of it. I will avenge everyone, for the children, for the neighbors, for the chickens, the geese, and for the poor boar." "The boar," I repeated, trying to process his words. "The boar," Alex confirmed, taking another swig of the liqueur and grimacing slightly. "I hear you," I nodded slowly. I still told myself that it would be simple. The creature was large. If I could hit a hare, I surely wouldn't miss a target of that size. Alex was confident that the predatory filth would return. His farm still had things worth preying on. Though the unknown nature of the creature chilled me to the bone, I reassured myself that I had the rifle. I imagined myself shooting the beast and becoming the hero of the village. The very next night, Alex and I set our grim ambush. Alex was posted up in his backyard, hiding behind a dilapidated tool shed, while I took my position outside the perimeter fence, facing the deepest section of the woods. This was the only place where the creature usually emerged onto the fields. I sat there for nearly 2 hours. The nights were always fiercely cold in this region, and I had foolishly worn only a thin jacket. I began to shiver violently. I was just about to slip through the gate, intent on begging Alex for a cup of tea to warm my hands, when I saw it. Moving across the open field, silent and impossibly fast, the three-legged filth was running. It moved in unnerving, irregular leaps, a jerky silhouette that betrayed no effort. I could hear nothing of its passing, no thud of feet, no gasping breath. I instantly sent a whispered voice message to Alex. Alex, I see the filth. Get ready. I wanted him to be prepared, but the creature wasn't heading for his farm. It was running straight toward the neighboring property. I barely had time to pull the rifle from my shoulder before the thing cleared the high fence in a single, fluid jump. I heard the chaos erupt immediately from the next house. The lights flicked on, there were shouting and frantic movements, and then the high-pitched shriek of a woman. Then, just as abruptly, the three-legged horror bounded back out. It was carrying its prize. Something was thrashing weakly, dangling from its massive jaws. It ends now, I hissed, steadying the rifle against the cold wood of the fence post. I aimed and squeezed the trigger. The heavy hunting slug caught the creature mid-run. I couldn't be sure exactly where I hit it, but the force of the blast was enough to sweep the monster off its feet. It tumbled across the frozen ground, rolling like a dark, broken wheel. Even that round, designed to take down a massive bear, had done the job. The thing lay twitching on the field. A surge of reckless courage, mixed with pure rage, washed over me. I bolted from my cover, rifle ready, intending to get close enough to finish it with a clean shot to the head. I stopped a few feet away, aiming down the barrel, and stared. My blood turned to ice in my veins. What have I shot? It was hairless, grotesquely gaunt, and strangely elongated. Its torso was too long, and I could clearly see its ribs straining against the pallid skin. Its legs ended in feet that looked surprisingly like human feet, and it had one normal arm. But where the second arm should have been, there was only smooth, uninterrupted flesh. There was no shoulder joint, no sign an arm had ever existed there. But its head was the source of true terror. Its eyes were immense, dark, and utterly flat, absorbing all light. Its nose was long and cartilaginous, leading down to enormous, powerful jaws armed with thick, jagged, pointed teeth. Its mouth was so huge that it could easily have consumed a human skull whole. I looked at the black, ragged wound in its flank. There was not a single drop of blood. My training screamed for me to place the final round into its brain, but as I hesitated, mesmerized by the alien horror of its face, the thing lashed out. Its one functional fist slammed into my face. The impact was cataclysmic. I was thrown backward, my rifle flying away, the world dissolving into a screaming void. A terrible ringing filled my ears, my jaw screamed with agonizing pain, and I felt a blinding, tearing sensation as my eyeball was violently jarred in its socket. Alex and several other villagers came running, drawn by the gunshot and the ensuing commotion. I could hear their confused shouts, but the sounds were distant and garbled. As they rushed toward me, the filth dragged itself upright and sprinted away, vanishing into the deep forest despite the gaping wound in its side. On the ground where it had fallen, all that remained was the pathetic, feather-torn carcass of a white turkey. In a single, violent blow, my bullet had only grazed the hellish tripod. It had, in return, torn my ear, cracked my jaw, and dislocated my eye. I spent the next week recovering in the city hospital, my face wrapped in bandages. When I finally returned to the settlement, I found that the village was in the throes of a genuine crisis. We finally understood the horrifying truth: the creature had previously only stolen livestock, an act that had actually spared us. Now that men had declared war on it, the fiend demonstrated how truly merciless it could be. The nightmare began with the children. In the dead of night, a 14-year-old boy went missing. He had stepped into the yard to give the dog the scraps of their dinner. His parents heard only a choked, brief yelp, followed by a profound, terrible silence. The father rushed out and saw the three-legged shape running into the distance, dragging the boy's frail figure across the frozen ground. The boy was gone, unseen for days. Then came the tragedy that broke the village. You remember George, my old school friend? The thing broke into his home. The next morning, the horrific news echoed across the settlement: George and his wife were dead. The house was a scene of senseless carnage, blood everywhere, windows shattered. They had been killed without reason, their necks savagely twisted and their bodies tossed into separate rooms. And the most chilling horror, their 2 young children were gone. The disappearance was absolute, and a cold certainty settled over the survivors: they would never be found. Panic was absolute. A whole family wiped out. We immediately mobilized a hunting party. Out of all the men in the settlement, we found only 5 working rifles. The rest armed themselves with whatever makeshift weapons they could muster. One man brought a heavy machete, another a sharpened shovel, a third carried a long, iron fire crowbar. We decided it was crucial to hunt during daylight. Our plan was simple: stick together, locate the creature's den, and kill it. I walked with a company of 11 strong, hardened men, my rifle over my shoulder, and I was still profoundly afraid. We knew exactly which section of the woods to comb. The creature always appeared from the same, cursed stretch of forest at the edge of the field. I had always avoided that place. It felt like dead ground, a tangled mess of thickets, deep ravines, and moldering, fallen trees. Even the animals and birds seemed to shun it. The forest there was always eerily silent. They, too, must have known this was the lair of a terrible killer. We plunged into that impassable wilderness, climbing over the deadfall. The men grumbled and swore, debating the cruel revenge they would exact. "We'll put a heavy rope around its neck and hang it from an oak tree," one shouted. "Let the crows have their fill." "There won't be anything left to hang," said the man with the machete, his face tight with hatred. "I will chop it into mince." I felt a creeping unease at their overconfidence. They had yet to see what we were truly dealing with. While I was in the hospital, the horrifying image of that giant, tooth-filled maw had haunted my every waking and sleeping moment. The men rushed forward, their impatience overriding caution. "Guys, we agreed not to split up." I yelled, but they ignored me, driven by the need for action. We were deep in the woods now, and the atmosphere was suffocating. Even though the day was technically sunny, the light barely penetrated the thick canopy of trees hanging overhead like a solid, dark ceiling. It felt like an eternally enchanted place of shadow. Suddenly, a man up front screamed. We all exchanged panicked looks and scrambled forward through the rotten logs as fast as our legs could carry us. I lagged slightly behind the main group but moved with desperate speed. The men in the lead stopped abruptly, freezing as if they had reached the edge of an abyss. One of the men below wailed, "Why are you standing there? Help me out. Pull me out of this." I ran up to the men and instantly froze, too. We were standing on the lip of a massive ravine, a horrifying chasm filled entirely with the decomposing carcasses of animals. It was a swamp of putrefying flesh and bones, a silent, festering waste disposal site. Flies swarmed in black, buzzing clouds over the rotting corpses, and the stench was a palpable, sickening force, so foul it felt strong enough to poison the air and kill us all. And wallowing in the middle of this putrid filth was our comrade with the crowbar. He had hurried too much and plunged straight into the death pit. We helped him crawl out. He was slick with pus, blood, and decaying matter. "Go home, wash yourself thoroughly," I advised him, keeping my distance. "You'll catch something lethal otherwise." "Forgive me, lads," he mumbled, broken, and stumbled back toward the village. Our fighting force was now down to 10. We remained on the edge of the ravine. It was immediately obvious whose work this was. The three-legged killer had been operating here for a long, long time. The ravine was its dumping ground. In the sludge, we could see the remains of partially eaten deer, a dog's decomposing snout, a goat's skull, and human bones. I noticed them at the exact moment the others did. We gasped, seeing a bleached ribcage and a fractured skull staring up at us from the murky pit. "The wicked bastard," the man with the rifle whispered quietly. Another added, "Until we put this filth down, we are not returning from this forest." Everyone was fueled by burning hatred and a desperate desire for vengeance. We circled the ravine and pushed on. I scanned the trees, wondering where the creature could be hiding. Did it have a lair underground? Could it be waiting in the thick branches? I knew it wouldn't be simple. It would not allow itself to be killed easily. I and the other men with rifles now led the group, while the men with melee weapons guarded our backs. Again, we faced the heavy deadfall, the ground squelching beneath our boots like wet rags. We were surrounded by skeletal, dead trees, utterly devoid of leaves. Above us, the gray clouds gathered, creating a suffocating dome of silence. Suddenly, a sharp, horrific scream came from behind. One of our men had been seized. The thing had attacked from the rear, its teeth locked around the man's neck. His scream quickly subsided into a terrible, wet gurgle as he choked on his own blood. The creature tried to run, but its burden was too great. "Shoot it," one of the remaining men roared. We knew the man who was taken was already lost. We opened fire, all 5 rifles thundering at once. The forest shook with the deafening roar. Bullets tore into the creature's thin, gray body. It shrieked, a high, unnatural sound, and dropped the half-decapitated body of our comrade. It tried to scramble away, but we quickly reloaded and rushed after it. I raised my rifle, and the creature tossed its head back. I aimed for the center mass of its skull, and my bullet tore through the back of its neck. The other men closed in, pouring fire into its body, riddling it with lead. Not a single drop of blood escaped its numerous wounds. The tripod finally slumped to the ground, its legs kicking weakly, its hand clawing uselessly at the earth, as if still trying to pull itself away. The man with the machete ran up and brought the heavy, sharp blade down, striking the already ruined head. Lying before us was something utterly unreal, a kind of bloodless undead that seemed to have materialized from pure hatred. I knelt down and hesitantly touched its skin. To the touch, it was as hard as stone, yet it burned with an unnatural, chilling cold. "Let's drag it back to the village," the machete man said, extracting the clean blade from the creature's head. He stared at the metal in confusion. It was utterly spotless. The creature was incredibly heavy. We looped a thick rope around its neck and began the long, brutal task of dragging it through the tangled wood. We pulled for a full hour. Finally, we stopped, exhausted, realizing we could never carry it out ourselves. There were too many massive, fallen trees in this part of the forest. We were gathering our breath and discussing how to call for more help when the rope suddenly slipped from our hands. The three-legged filth came back to life. With the speed of lightning, it tore itself free and vanished into the deepest thicket. We had tragically underestimated the pure, unholy tenacity and strange resilience of this bloodless horror. After the second battle, the village was finally taken seriously. A special military detachment arrived. The soldiers swept the forest but found nothing of the creature. They only recovered the body of our dead comrade and retrieved the human remains from the hellish ravine. All of our photographs and video recordings were forcibly deleted from our phones. We were told that everything had to be kept strictly confidential until the conclusion of the investigation. So much time has passed now, and there is still no news. The horrible forest filth has not appeared again. Life in the settlement has slowly returned to a shaky semblance of normal, but in every single house, people remember what happened here. Many have installed heavy wooden shutters and metal blinds on their windows, locking themselves in at night as if they live in underground bunkers. And me? I have not been hunting a single time since that day. We all live with the chilling, perpetual fear that the three-legged horror will one day reappear. The tension is building. If our first story gave you chills, don't get comfortable just yet. In the next chapter, we're flashing back to the late 80s to tell you about a stranger who came to a remote Siberian village looking to make the most horrifying purchase imaginable. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Now, let's dive into story 2. I'm sure every driver has, at some point, heard those dreadful, unsettling sounds that instantly ruin your mood. You know, the kind that means a trip to the garage, sacrificing your time, money, and nerves. Finding reliable work isn't easy, and people invented avuspot.com to get quality service without leaving their life savings behind. You select your car, the service it needs, and a convenient map displays the best offers and garages. All it takes is leaving your name and phone number. And a couple of clicks. Oh, and waiting for the callback. You can find a great price for absolutely any vehicle. Whether you drive an old German sedan, a trusted Japanese model, or a brand new Chinese import, everyone leaves satisfied. Plus, your warranty stays intact. So, check out the link in the description or download the Avuspot app on your smartphone. That way, a good deal is always close, and you might never have to hear those terrifying sounds again. Try to picture the quietest, most serene place imaginable. A world where you don't need to lock your door, simply because everyone knows everyone else. Where, instead of the crushing urban clamor, the streets are filled with the bright laughter of children, the hurried chatter of adults, and the familiar sounds of livestock stirring in their barns. Where there is no toxic smog, and every breath you take is easy and clean. This secluded, contained little world is nearly impossible for a stranger to enter. And even harder to leave unnoticed. Welcome to my story. The Yakutian village of Sinsk is completely cut off from the mainland. It's surrounded by the immense Lena River, its tributary the Sinyaya River, and a dense, impenetrable swathe of taiga forest. From the regional capital, you can only reach the village by boat in the summer. Or by driving across the ice road in the dead of winter. The paved road ends 60 kilometers away, dissolving into a rough, rutted country track. When the weather turns sour, it's simply impassable. And right before you reach the village, the road literally vanishes, cut off by the Sinyaya River itself. I am going to tell you about the dark, grim underbelly of human life. The side you all secretly crave to hear. Stay alert and try not to lose your mind, or anything else you hold dear. I was involved in this story with my younger brother a long, long time ago, when we were just little boys. Back then, he wasn't the formidable Stephen Thompson, a man as wide and unyielding as a tugboat. Now, he's a towering, 40-year-old man with a salt and pepper beard. But in this story, he will be little Stevie, a 6-year-old boy. I was only 4. In real time, I'm 38. I am a financially stable, grown man, but every single time I remember that year, I instantly revert to a terrified, sniveling kid. It was the late 80s. The stranger was noticed in Sinsk immediately. He was a man close to 2 meters tall, with an unnaturally long, jet-black beard that almost reached his knees. The man himself was as thick as a boar. He was also dressed in garish, mismatched clothing. Everything seemed to be red, yet in different shades, which only made him appear more frightening to everyone. At first, he just observed. He stood there, smoking cheap cigarettes, peering into people's yards. In his hands, he carried a massive, canvas sack. Stevie saw him first. We were playing outside with the other kids from the village. Max, look. He nudged my shoulder and whispered nervously, pointing a finger somewhere down the street. I turned toward the sound to see what my brother was trying to show me. And my gaze slammed directly into a colossal, bulky figure. There he stood. The strange man, looking exactly like the real-life Barabbas from the old cartoon. It was as if the bearded giant had somehow cracked the thick lens of our television set and crawled out into our actual world. Whoa, he's so fat. Just like that boar at Uncle Nate's. I practically yelled. While Stevie had been whispering cautiously, I was gaping at the Barabbas with wide-eyed astonishment, as if I'd stumbled upon some exotic circus beast. Quiet. He'll hear you, Stevie hissed. As it turned out, my words had been far too loud. My brother realized this too and slapped his hand lightly over my mouth to silence me, but it was already too late. Upon hearing the word boar, the man turned sharply in our direction, shooting us a look filled with pure hatred and irritation. Wild eyes flashed with fury from beneath his shaggy, scowling brows. "Ah, you filthy brats," he roared. A strange, enraged howl that was half human, half animal. The sound was so terrifying, containing such vicious menace, that my legs buckled. Let's get out of here." Stevie grabbed my t-shirt and we bolted, running home as fast as our little legs could carry us. Naturally, like all the other kids in our group, we were petrified of the strange man. Everyone scattered with shrieks, diving into their own yards to take shelter under their mothers' skirts. As we ran, both of us were convinced that Barabbas was chasing us, and that he was seconds away from snatching us up. The house where we lived with our mother was almost on the outskirts of the village. Mom was away working, employed as a seamstress at a factory in the nearby town, pulling double shifts. We were home alone, waiting for our provider to return, passing the time with long walks and playtime. The truth was, that man hadn't come to Sinsk just for a visit. He had a very peculiar objective. Barabbas was buying cats. And he was paying handsomely. He approached every yard, knocked on every gate, and offered an astronomical sum of money for the local cats. The bearded man didn't skip a single household, going to the wealthier homes and the nearly dilapidated shacks alike. The neighbors, driven by greed, were so easily convinced that they dragged every single cat they owned over to him. For that kind of money, they would have sold their souls, let alone their household pets. Times were hard back then. It was a hungry period, even for those who kept livestock in gardens. Ironically, that particular year, it had been especially difficult to maintain a large farm. There was simply nothing to feed the chickens, goats, or cows, and the harvests had been pitiful. The terrifying offer from Barabbas, therefore, was welcomed by everyone. At least, no one refused him. From every yard, the sound of children crying reached our ears. The kids didn't want to part with their beloved animals, but the adults literally tore the pitifully meowing cats from their hands and roughly shoved them into Barabbas's sack. What else could they do? They needed to feed the family. The children simply couldn't understand that necessity yet. He came to our house later than everyone else. We were the last in line for the cat sale since our shack was right on the very edge of the village. A loud knock hit the door. "Homeowners. Homeowners, I have a very profitable offer for you. Open the door, let your guest in," he boomed, and then knocked again. The strong blows made the door shudder violently. I felt as if our entire house had trembled and suddenly gone silent, hiding from sheer terror. I dove behind the large wooden dresser, only my round eyes peeking out. I was already absolutely terrified of the bearded man. Stevie, being the older brother, had to muster up his courage and slowly crack the door open. The lanky man's face instantly pushed into the small gap. Nearby, a pitiful chorus of meowing sounded. The cats in the sack were squirming restlessly, desperately begging for help, but no one was letting them out. "Oh, little one. So you live here? Are the adults home? I'm buying cats. Do you have a cat?" Stevie took a deep breath and enunciated clearly, "Mom is not home, she's at work. My brother and I are too little to make decisions like that. So please, leave." My brother was already pulling the door toward him to slam it shut right in Barabbas's face when the man quickly shoved his massive hand into the gap between the door and the frame. He then pressed against it, forcing the opening wider. Now, his entire huge head squeezed through, his beard dragging on the ground because he had to bend down. Behind Stevie, right in the middle of our kitchen on the striped rug, sat the cat. She was fluffy and very beautiful. Her name was Mariska. She was a sweet, affectionate little thing. She had never, ever scratched anyone in her life. We all loved her dearly. "I see you do have a cat after all," the man said. "Well, are you going to sell her?" The man squinted his already tiny eyes, which were lost in the folds of wrinkles on his wide face. "You'll make your mother happy. Look how much money I'll give you." The bearded man reached into his pocket and pulled out several paper bills, thrusting them right under Stevie's nose. My brother hid timidly behind the wide wooden door, peeking at the scary stranger with one eye. "Give away our Mariska," he said uncertainly, staring at the giant and shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Why do you need her, sir?" Barabbas smiled. In his wide mouth, large, gold teeth, big as a horse's, gleamed menacingly. "I'm going to make a fur coat out of her. You know how expensive fur coats are in the city. The fashionable ladies snap them up quickly, they'll tear them right off my hands. And your Mariska, look what a beauty she is. She'd be perfect right on the collar. A fine coat it would make. They'd even pay more for her." The moment I heard what he wanted the cat for, I burst into tears, ran to her, and hugged her tightly. "On a collar? No, sir. Please, don't make Mariska into a collar." Tears began to gather in the corners of Stevie's eyes as well. Barabbas's gaze shifted. It became cold, calculating, and cunning. The man stepped closer to the doorstep, right up against the frame, and looked intently into my brother's wet eyes. "Don't be a fool, little one. I will give you so much money for just this one cat. You give the bills to your mother tonight, and she'll bake you pies. Do you want apple? Or cherry? Well, are you going to hand over the cat?" I could see my brother hesitating, and out of desperation, I started crying even louder. That sound seemed to give Stevie a burst of power and conviction. "I won't give her to you," the little boy shouted, and with a sharp tug, he slammed the heavy door shut, immediately turning the key in the lock. At that exact second, a heavy fist smashed into the door. Thump! The blow was so violent that the wooden panel trembled again. "Open the door, you little bastard. If you don't hand her over, I won't just skin the cat, I'll twist your head right off," a deep bass voice thundered. It didn't just thunder, it roared, like a real tiger bear. But Stevie didn't open the door again. He grabbed me and Mariska and dragged us to the furthest room inside the house. The neighbors saw the whole scene, but they just pointed and scoffed. "They're just little kids, what do you expect?" It meant more money for them. Driven by their own greed, the neighbors had even rounded up all the stray cats in the village. Barabbas finally drove away as the day was sinking into sunset. By that time, only 2 cats were left in the entire village, Mariska, and an ancient, one-eyed tomcat named Vasily, who lived with old Grandma Christie on the opposite side of Sinsk. That cat was a living reminder of her late husband, so the old woman absolutely refused to part with him. That evening, our mother, Luba, came home after her grueling shift. Gossip travels fast in a village. As soon as she crossed the village line, a neighbor was already telling her about the cat buyer's visit, even boasting about the money she had received. "Look, Luba, look." The woman shoved the crumpled bills under my mother's nose. "See how much is here. This money is enough for us to live comfortably for a whole month, and some will be left for the next. And this is only for 2 cats. Look how much he paid for them. Oh, is that so? How wonderful. This is the Lord sending us luck in this hungry year, to make it easier to survive. My mother sighed. The livestock are dying, and the wheat is drying up in the fields. It's a lean, hungry time, and winter is still ahead. Mom smiled politely at the neighbor, but her thoughts were racing. If only her sons had been smart enough to sell their useless Mariska. There was absolutely nothing to eat at home, the cupboards were bare. That money needed to be set aside for the winter so they wouldn't starve. She arrived home to find us sitting on the floor, playing with Mariska. We were trailing a straw along the floor, and the cat was leaping like a dragonfly. How could you? How could you not sell the cat? All the neighbors sold theirs. You two are the only fools I have. God, why have you given me such children? That was our chance to survive the winter. What are we going to do now? They haven't paid me for 3 months. The country is going through a hard time. We have to try to survive. But how can I survive when I have 2 idiots instead of sons? Mom was furious, railing at us non-stop, repeating the same accusations over and over. What have you done, you devils? How could you not think to sell her? Who needs your flea-bitten cat, anyway? She's useless. She catches mice, but so what? We could have had money for her, do you understand? Money. There's nothing to eat at home, and you. I'll show you. Our mother grabbed a kitchen towel and soundly whacked both of us. She cried and scolded, even trying to beat us both with a broom. She was consumed by rage. In the end, she made us kneel on dried peas in the corner for almost an hour. During that time, she drank cup after cup of tea steeped with dried wild herbs, and only then did she finally start to calm down. We all settled down and ate dinner. Small, boiled potatoes that Stevie and I had pilfered from a field. Night fell. Mom was asleep, but we were still sitting in the bedroom, blowing on the sore little wounds the peas had left, and gently petting Mariska's fluffy head. We were behaving very quietly, terrified of our mother's anger, when suddenly the cat froze and stopped purring. We listened closely. Sounds were drifting in from outside. Something was scratching at the window, and then at the door. It was persistent, as if some wild creature had come from the forest and was desperately trying to get into our house. We just sat there, listening intently. Then, someone tapped gently on the window. So lightly, as if checking if everyone inside was asleep. Suddenly, Mariska leapt to her feet and galloped toward the front door. She threw herself against it and hissed, then let out a low, menacing growl. The sounds at the door immediately stopped. Then she darted toward the window, vaulting onto the sill like a hurricane, slamming her head against the glass, and then roaring loudly, peering out into the darkness. "Quiet, quiet, you silly thing, you'll wake Mom. She'll put you on the peas in the corner too," I whispered. But Mariska didn't listen. We were in shock. Our perfectly normal cat was darting from the door to the window, hissing and yelling at the top of her lungs like a lunatic. Her fur stood on end, making her look as round as a furry hat. She kept running like that all night long, as if driving something away from the window and the door, hissing and shrieking fearfully, and hurling herself against the wood. And that something kept scratching all night, only leaving when dawn broke. But Mariska patrolled the territory until the very last moment. She walked around the house, listening, peering into every room. However, it was silent. Perhaps it really was a wild animal, we thought. So, our cat chased away a bear or a wolf. That seemed strange enough on its own. Mom hadn't woken up from Mariska's frantic activity. Usually, she was a very light sleeper, waking up at the slightest noise, but here she was, utterly oblivious to the hissing, scuttling, meowing, roaring, and a host of other sounds. She must have been utterly exhausted from work and the ensuing fight with us, losing all her strength. Neither of us fell asleep even after sunrise. In the morning, Mariska was completely calm, as always. She sat in the kitchen, minding her own business, fastidiously grooming herself. Mom decided to go to a neighbor's house to borrow some eggs, bread, and milk, as there was absolutely no food left. An hour later, she rushed back, her eyes wide with terror, as if she had just seen a monster. First, she paced frantically around the room, unsure what to do, then she froze in front of the writing desk and began searching for her address book, where she kept important numbers, bus schedules, and other notes. Stevie walked up to her and nervously tugged at the sleeve of her robe. "Mom, what is it?" "What happened?" he asked quietly, looking up into her frantic eyes. "Oh, son. Trouble has come upon us." "What is happening?" "Our neighbors aren't home. The door is wide open, but I thought maybe they were out tending the cattle. But they're not anywhere. I went to the other yards, and those are empty, too. There is no one in the village at all. The dogs are barking behind every fence, and the cows are lowing in the barns, but there are no people. Only old Grandma Christie is digging in her garden. Only we four are left in the whole village, you, me, your brother, and Grandma Christie." She suddenly fell silent and swallowed hard. "We need to get to the city, find help. People can't just vanish like that. And almost the entire village. That's so many people, a whole crowd. Something bad happened last night. Oh, something truly awful. I dreamt that someone was grabbing my legs, trying to drag me off the bed, but they kept failing. My legs were slipping out of their grip, as if they were coated in oil." A creaky, elderly voice sounded behind us. "I had that dream too. And those weren't hands at all, they were like beast claws. As if a true animal wanted to take us. That man who was walking around the village yesterday. He wasn't a man at all. It was a wicked spirit roaming the streets and gathering all the cats so they couldn't save their owners. They say cats can see evil spirits and can even drive them away. This was the trick the evil one used to destroy the souls of the people, but our cats were able to protect us. My grandmother told me about this when I was just a girl. That's how we saved them from the wicked one. And they repaid the debt by saving our souls in the night." Grandma Christie shuffled her way into the house with difficulty, barely stepping over the threshold with her skinny legs in rubber galoshes. Behind her, the one-eyed cat Vasily hobbled in, limping. He and Mariska sniffed each other like old friends, rubbed against one another, and settled down together on the round knitted rug. "What is this, Grandma Christie? How could this happen? We need to go to the city, to the police. The ferry schedule. I think it's here somewhere. We can still make it today," my mother frantically mumbled, flipping through the pages of her book. Of course, she couldn't tell two small boys everything she had witnessed. Only 4 living people truly remained in the village. The rest, they were all dead. Not just dead, but slaughtered. Their mutilated corpses were scattered from the beds where the villagers had been sleeping peacefully, all the way out to their yards, where they had been brutally and finally killed. This bloody trail was decorated with viscera ripped from torn abdomens, along with other sickening remnants, pulled teeth and clumps of hair. I only learned this truth 30 long years later when I found old newspaper clippings. My mother had meticulously hidden them, never wanting Stevie and me to know the terrifying truth, at least not at such a young age. That day, we left for the city with our mother. Towards evening, many policemen arrived in Sinsk. We saved our Mariska from the wicked one, and she saved us. Those words have stayed fixed in my mind for years. Believe it or not, but since that time, cats have always been a part of my life. First, there was Mariska. After her death, my mother always adopted new cats and tomcats. We returned home as soon as life returned to some semblance of normal. The village slowly began to breathe again. New residents filled the houses, mostly those in need, such as fire victims. But life in Sinsk was forever changed. People were no longer open or friendly. No one felt safe anymore, and there were countless reasons for that. Even excluding the mass slaughter orchestrated by the wicked one.